Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name's Tony, and I primarily take care of houseplants and make videos that show how to take care of houseplants. Tonight, I have 4 bird of paradise plants that need to be repotted, so I figured I'd take you along with me and show you how that goes. In this video, I'll tell you a little bit about the bird of paradise, and I'll give you a perfect soil recipe so you can do this at home. Um, I use a lot of soil amendments. You don't have to, but regardless, I will share my soil recipe with you. But please click that like and subscribe button. It helps out a lot. Thank you. So here's my bird of paradise. This one is a more common one. This is an orange bird of paradise. And these plants are native to South Africa, where it's tropical. So they do require a pretty humid environment with a lot of uh, indirect sun because they are jungle plants. They don't really get a lot of direct sun, but they get a lot of indirect sun. Before I started this video, I emptied out the old potting soil, and you can kind of see this big root ball. Um, it's pretty substantial. They're known for making really big roots that hold in a bunch of water because, again, they're tropical plants. So, in order to do this, I have to have a bucket to mix the soil. All right. So my recipe for the bird of paradise, and I'll post this in the description as well. You want to start out with a 40% of a good quality potting mix. Now I use Happy Soil potting mix. Probably can't see it too well, but I'll post a picture right here. Um, this potting soil is my favorite to use. It's a little bit expensive. It's kind of expensive, but it comes with microbes, and I found that it has less uh, flies, the fungus gnats, on average than some of the other like Miracle Grow mixes. I just like it a lot. It serves its purpose really well for me. So in addition to your 40% of your good quality potting soil, you want to use perlite or pumice. Now I have perlite and pumice, but I'm going to use perlite for this because uh, perlite is good for maybe a couple of years and then it degrades over time. Pumice will essentially last forever or as long as your plant's going to live. I anticipate that this plant's going to grow a lot over the next year or two, so I am not going to use pumice. I'm not going to use pumice. I'm going to use this perlite. Um, because in the end that will save me some money because pumice is much more expensive, but it is a great option. And you want to use about 20% of your perlite or pumice. This helps with aeration in the soil, and it prevents soil compaction. Your next ingredient, you want to use about 15% or so of a really high quality cactus potting mix. Now, I'm not a big fan of Miracle Grow, but I live in the middle of nowhere, and my local stores don't have many options for um, cactus soil. So I have to get good quality stuff once I uh, go into an area where there's a lot of people. So I live in rural western Colorado. There's really not like the closest store, the closest Lowe's, for example, is about 70 miles away. So my options are very limited. Please don't judge me for using Miracle Grow. I usually don't recommend it, but anyway, you want to use about 15% of a good quality cactus potting mix. Next up, sphagnum moss. So the rest of my recipe calls for about 10% sphagnum moss. You can get this at Lowe's or Home Depot or any of those big box stores. Um, this retains moisture in the soil without letting the roots of the plant sit in the moisture. So sphagnum moss is super important for the bird of paradise. Of course, this is dry, so before I use it, I'm gonna wet it. Um, the next thing, 10% of worm castings. So when I was in Colorado Springs, I was able to pick some of this up. I will put a more clear picture right up here in the video. It's Wiggle Worm brand soil builder. I use worm castings mostly only for the purpose of fertilization. It just puts nutrients in the soil. Now, your Happy Frog comes with a lot of nutrients in it already. Uh, you don't need worm castings. That's just optional. I always put worm castings in my plants, but that's just something that I choose to do. But again, it's optional. Um, and then lastly, Charcoal, you want to use about anywhere from 5 to 10% charcoal. Uh, Here's the brand that I use, Espoma. I'll put a picture of this in the video. Again, you can get, I got this in Colorado Springs. Lowe's, I know, sells a brand. It's this other brand called Fertilome. It doesn't matter. It's charcoal. And then this, it keeps odors out of your soil, and it does help with aeration and drainage. So these 6 ingredients are the key for good quality potting soil. Now, I'm gonna start with this smaller orange bird of paradise, and I've already put the Happy Frog potting mix. Uh, I pre-measured it because that's the longest part of this. So I'm gonna add that about 40%. This is the container I'm using right here. I'm just transferring it into a bigger container for mixing purposes. So this container right here is approximately 12 cups. So if I'm going to use 40% of Happy Frog potting mix, that means I need to add about 4.8 cups of Happy Frog. I'm not going to measure 4.8. I just put in 5. It's fine. So 5 cups of Happy Frog potting mix. Next up is going to be the perlite. So perlite is going to be 20% roughly. And that translates into about 2.4 cups of my 12 cup container. So 2.4 cups. Don't be like me. You should probably wear a mask. I might even cover my face a little bit. So 1, 2. We'll do about 2.5 cups or so. The perlite makes a fine dust that's not really the best to breathe in. You don't want to get in the habit of regularly breathing that stuff in. So far I have 40% Happy Frog, 20% perlite. Next up is about 1.8 cups of my cactus mix. And again, just do your best guess. So here's 1, and then almost 2 of your cactus mix. Next up for my 12 cup container is going to be about 1.2 cups of sphagnum moss. So here's my sphagnum moss. We'll do 1 full cup. And then add it in. And then we'll just do like a small, just a little bit more. No, I put the sphagnum moss in dry when I measure it. I'll add water to it in a little bit. The next thing is going to be worm castings. Okay. For the worm castings, I want to use about 1.2 cups or so for this recipe. So, all right, so I added my 1.2 cups of worm castings. And lastly, about 0.6 cups of charcoal. So I'll do about a half cup. About a half cup of charcoal. And I do like this brand a lot. The Espoma brands. And now you just want to mix it up really well. And make sure you get a big cloud of perlite in your face. That's how you know you did it really well. So this is all mixed up pretty well. Now I want to add some water. Just a little bit of water. And you want to mix it up again. This is going to let that sphagnum moss get moist. I have my pot and I have my plant. First thing you want to do is add a little bit of soil to the bottom of the container. And then you take your bird of paradise. This is just a small one. If you can't tell, it's about a foot long or so. And for the you just want to cover the rest of the area in with some soil. And if you portioned everything out correctly, you shouldn't really have much of anything left over. So these guys can grow anywhere from 4 to 6 feet. I'm sure people can grow them up to 10 or 12 feet inside. But out in the wild, they can get 20 to 30 feet tall. And the reason, I don't know if I said this earlier in the video, but the reason they're called bird of paradise plants is because once they flower, they produce flowers that look like tropical birds. Um, so they're pretty neat, although it can take, 5 to 7 years or so just to get the bird of paradise plants to flower even once. Um, I'm going to do a little bit of TLC here on the roots of this one. It's been a little neglected, so I'm just going to cut off 2 of the damaged leaves. I don't want to take off much more than that. There's 1 more damaged leaf, but I'll let that sit for a while. And that's how you pot a bird of paradise. So I have 3 more left to do. My next container right here, it's a red container. It's 14 cups of total product. So what this means is that if I'm going to go with my original ratio of 40% of Happy Frog potting mix, that's about 5.6 cups of Happy Frog. I pre-mixed it. I'm gonna put it right into the mixing bin. This is gonna be about 2.8 cups of perlite. I'll probably round it up closer to 3.
So 1, holding it away from my face. 2, and 0.8 or so.
The next part is a couple cups of cactus soil. So we'll do 1, 2, a little bit more. 1.4 cups of moss. Now I had to write down all the exact numbers on a piece of paper before I did this. There's no way I can memorize this all. So just bear with me. 1.4 cups of moss. So we'll do about 1.5 cups of sphagnum moss that goes into the mixture. So 1 and about 1/2. Now remember, sphagnum moss expands quite a bit, which is part of the reason why I add this into my mix while it's dry. Next up, it'll be about 1.4 cups of worm castings and about 1/2 cup, or 0.7 cups of charcoal. So here's about the correct amount of charcoal. Add the worm castings in. And again, you want to add just a little bit of water to the pot. Here's what we have so far. And just mix it in really good. This mix is so dry right now that this soil won't even stick to my hands for very long at all. Add a little bit to the bottom. A little bit more maybe. Have the bird of paradise. This won't last in this container for too long. I just don't have a whole lot of containers on hand right now. But I will deal with that when I deal with that. We'll cross that bridge once we get to it. That's bird of paradise number 2. For the third bird of paradise, if we're using our same ratio, this blue container right here is 40 cups. So that means that 16 of the cups have to be Happy Frog potting mix. And that's what I have measured out right here. This bird of paradise right here is a white bird of paradise. And it got root bound and it just needs a new home for a bit. Well, it just needs a new home, I should say. So this recipe calls for 40% Happy Frog potting mix, which I already added. This is going to need 20% perlite, which equates to, crazy enough, just about 8 cups or so of perlite. So, again, pull the perlite away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops. So 6 cups or so of potting soil. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 6 cups of potting soil. Of cactus soil, excuse me. 4 cups each of sphagnum moss and worm castings. So this is a pretty big container. This is about 2 cups. Sphagnum moss, we'll do about 2 more. I'm just guessing here. This is a science, but it's not an exact science. Um, as long as you're in the ballpark, that's that's all that matters. I want to add my 4 cups of worm castings. And lastly, 2 cups or so of charcoal. Right. And this is going to be a little bit harder to mix because the mixing pot is just not really big. So I'm going to go ahead and dump it into this additional bin. And I'll just start mixing it up. And now's a good time to add some water. You don't want the mix to be soaking wet or anything like that, but you do want a good amount of water. All right, so this appears to be thoroughly mixed and pretty chunky. So we'll go ahead and add a little bit of this mix to the bottom of the pot. Stick in the rest of the bird of paradise. There it is, all potted up. I like to tap around the edges just a little bit to make sure all those spaces get full of soil. So we go ahead and add just a little bit more. And 1 more left. The last bird of paradise, it's another orange bird of paradise. It's going to go into this black pot right here. So I'm just here planting my last bird of paradise. Just have to add a few more ingredients in, about 2 more cups of sphagnum moss and 2 more cups of worm castings or so. And then lastly, about a cup of charcoal, 0.9 cups. So we'll ground it to about 1. Into the mixing bowl with some water. In the wild, bird of paradise plants are actually pollinated by sunbirds. Again, they're native to South Africa, so the tropical and subtropical regions, and they get pollinated by sunbirds. The sunbirds drink the nectar from the bird of paradise. So we'll just take some of our soil, put it on the bottom here. Take our bird of paradise, plop it in, and then just fill in the rest of the open space with soil. Not too bad. We ended up with just a little bit of soil left over, but I will use that for something else because this soil recipe really can be transferred to a lot of other tropical type plants. It's certainly better than using just soil straight out of the bag for just about any tropical plant. You could also make birds of paradise live in regular potting soil, whether that's Miracle Grow or whatever brand that you prefer. You might have some issues if you don't get enough sunlight to drive transpiration. One issue that I run into if I just use potting soil only for any of my houseplants, besides the fungus gnats, the big issue is I find that the soil tends to get compacted and waterlogged because I don't know if it's the quality of perlite that they use or the quantity of the perlite that they use, but it doesn't take long before it compacts and then water kind of just pools in the soil. But if you make your own soil, or at least amend your own soil, you won't have any issues like that. So here's number 4. Just gonna tap it around the sides. And if you didn't make a huge mess, you probably didn't do it correctly. For those of you who stayed for the entire video, I appreciate you. Please consider hitting the subscribe button and the like button for more content like this. Until next time,